After 60, 8 morning habits that keep your brain sharp. Most people think brain health depends on what happens at night, getting enough sleep, winding down properly, or making healthier choices later in life. But what if the biggest influence on your brain actually comes within the first 30 minutes after you wake up? The way you start your morning can have a surprisingly powerful impact on how clearly you think, how well you focus, and how your brain performs throughout the rest of the day. Before we continue, a quick reminder. This video is for educational purposes only. It isn't intended to provide medical advice, diagnose any condition, or guarantee specific results. The information you're about to hear is meant to raise awareness, and if you have concerns about your own health, it's always best to speak with a qualified healthcare professional. Now here's something that might surprise you. One of the 8 morning habits we'll cover directly influences what neurologists often refer to as your brain's internal morning clock. The surprising part? Most people are unknowingly doing it in a way that works against their brain instead of supporting it. In just a moment, I'll reveal which habit it is, but first, let's build the foundation. These 8 habits aren't random tips, they're connected. Each one supports the next, and when you skip one, the benefits of the others may not be as strong. As you watch, think about your own morning routine. Which of these habits are already part of your day? Which ones have you never considered before? The good news is that improving brain health doesn't require dramatic changes overnight. More often, it's the small, consistent habits you repeat every morning that make the biggest difference over time. Number 1, getting early exposure to natural daylight. Reaching for your phone the moment you open your eyes has become almost everyone's habit. But your brain's internal clock, known as the circadian rhythm, is far more sensitive to natural daylight than to artificial light. Getting exposure to natural light within the first 10 to 15 minutes after waking up can help support the healthy functioning of the chemical process linked to alertness and focus in the brain. This doesn't just affect your energy levels in that moment. It can also influence how restfully you fall asleep in the evening, because morning light acts like a trigger that helps regulate the timing of the sleep hormone released at night. The story of 82-year-old Walter is a good example of this. For years, Walter kept his curtains closed the moment he woke up and checked the news on his phone first thing. Eventually, he noticed he felt foggy and unfocused every afternoon. On his family's suggestion, he started going out to his garden each morning and sitting in the sunlight for about 10 minutes. Within a few weeks, he noticed that the afternoon mental fog had eased, and he felt more alert for the rest of the day. Individual experiences like this don't apply the same way to everyone, but the effect of daylight on cognitive function is becoming the subject of more and more research. There's an important detail worth noting here. Light that comes through a window may not have the same strong effect as light experienced directly outdoors. Because of this, it can be worth stepping out onto a balcony, standing in the yard, or standing in front of an open window for a few minutes if possible. Even on days with poor weather, a few minutes spent outside on a cloudy day can provide far more natural light exposure than hours spent inside a closed room. Beyond that, the timing of your daylight exposure stands out as an important detail too. Light received in the early morning hours appears to have a more noticeable regulating effect on the internal clock compared to light received in the afternoon. Because of this, some experts suggest that spending a few minutes outside before or during breakfast may be more beneficial than spending that same amount of time outside later in the day. This is especially useful for people living through winter months or in regions where the sun rises later, since sitting for a few minutes in the brightest room of the house or heading out for an early walk can be a practical way to capture this benefit. Walter's family made this habit easier for him to sustain by moving his garden chair directly into the corner where the sun hits first. So for Walter, this became a natural part of his daily routine that required no extra effort. Even though it may seem like a small adjustment, practical changes like this one can play a major role in helping a new habit become permanent. Number 2, drinking a glass of water before breakfast. Throughout the night, the body becomes dehydrated, and this can affect the brain more than you might think. Since a large portion of brain tissue is made up of water, even mild dehydration can be linked to shorter attention spans and difficulty with short-term memory. Drinking a glass of water when you wake up, before your coffee or tea, can help balance out the fluid loss from overnight and can support more efficient blood flow to the brain. 76-year-old Dorothy spent years starting her morning routine directly with coffee. During a health checkup, while talking with her doctor, she learned that some of the mild dizziness and forgetfulness she experienced in the mornings could actually be linked to simple dehydration. After she started drinking a glass of water before her coffee, she noticed she felt clearer and less tired in the mornings. This change might seem small, but it shows how a tiny addition to a daily routine can make a real difference. There's another important detail here. Caffeine has a mild diuretic effect, so when coffee is the very first thing you drink in the morning, it can actually add to the dehydration your body is already experiencing. This doesn't mean you need to give up coffee entirely. Simply changing the order can be enough. A simple pattern, water first, then coffee or tea, can help provide a more balanced energy level for the rest of the day. It's also a well-known fact that the sense of thirst naturally decreases with age. This means that older adults may not always feel thirsty even when their bodies need water. Because of this, rather than waiting to feel thirsty, adding water intake as a conscious habit to the morning routine can be especially valuable. Dorothy's doctor suggested a simple reminder method, placing a full glass of water on the nightstand before going to bed at night. This way, when she opened her eyes in the morning, she could easily follow through on this habit without having to search for water or walk to the kitchen. For some people, room temperature water is easier to drink than cold water, which can be a gentler option for the stomach in the early morning hours. Water intake amounts vary from person to person, but starting the day with a glass of water can be described as a gentle step that slowly wakes up both the body and the mind. Number 3, a short walk or light movement before breakfast. Most people know that exercise is important for brain health, but it's talked about less often that doing it in the morning hours may have its own special importance. A light 10 to 20-minute walk in the early morning gently raises the heart rate, and this can increase blood flow to the brain. This increase in blood flow supports the delivery of oxygen and nutrients to brain cells, which can have a positive effect on mental clarity. 79-year-old Harold began spending most of his days sitting after he retired, and over time, he noticed he felt more sluggish and less motivated. On his doctor's recommendation, he started taking a short walk around his neighborhood before breakfast. He kept the walk limited to just 5 minutes at first, but eventually extended it to 15 minutes. Harold says this small change has helped him feel more focused and less scattered throughout the day. Here, consistency may matter more than intensity. A high-intensity workout isn't necessary. The goal is to gently get the heart and circulation moving. For people dealing with joint issues or balance difficulties, light stretching in a chair or short stretching exercises at home can provide a similar feeling of renewed energy. What matters most is that movement is one of the first activities of the day. The way Harold chose his walking route is also worth noting. His doctor suggested that instead of walking the same monotonous path every day, he should take a different street a few times a week. The reason is that observing a new environment can gently stimulate the brain a bit more. While the mind often runs on autopilot on a familiar route, a slightly different path can gently activate attention and observation skills. Harold also made a point of noticing the sounds around him during his walks. The birds, his neighbors' gardens, instead of being absorbed in his phone, which made the walk not just physically but mentally refreshing as well. Having breakfast after a walk can bring its own advantage too. For some people, food digests more comfortably after light movement, which can support starting the day feeling lighter and less fatigued. Number 4, choosing breakfast foods that don't spike blood sugar. Starting the morning with sugary cereal, jam-covered toast, or fruit juice may seem convenient, but these kinds of foods can cause a rapid rise in blood sugar followed by a rapid crash. This fluctuation can be linked to the sudden fatigue, irritability, and difficulty focusing that many people feel by midday. Instead, a breakfast rich in protein and fiber can help blood sugar rise more slowly and steadily, which can provide the brain with a more stable source of energy. 81-year-old Margaret had eaten nothing but jam-covered toast and sweetened tea for breakfast for years. She assumed the sudden afternoon fatigue she experienced was simply a natural part of aging. During a conversation with a nutritionist, she was advised to add protein sources like eggs, oats, or yogurt to her breakfast. Within a few weeks, she noticed that the sudden afternoon crash had noticeably decreased. This kind of change doesn't require a complete diet overhaul. Simply adding some protein alongside foods like bread or cereal, whether that's eggs, cheese, yogurt, or nuts, can be enough. It can also be important not to delay breakfast too long, because eating high-sugar foods after a long period without food can make blood sugar swings even more pronounced. Margaret's nutritionist also taught her another simple principle: always add some healthy fat to breakfast. Options like avocado, olive oil, or a few walnuts can slow down digestion and help blood sugar rise more gradually. After learning this, Margaret started adding thinly sliced avocado or a few walnuts on top of her toast in the mornings. She also made a point of choosing whole fruit instead of fruit juice when adding a small piece of fruit to her breakfast, since the fiber found in whole fruit helps slow down how quickly sugar enters the bloodstream. Margaret's daughter noticed that after her mother started making these changes, she sounded much more lively and coherent during their afternoon phone calls. Of course, observations like this aren't scientific proof, but they offer a nice example of how small changes in diet can make a difference in daily quality of life. Number 5, engaging the mind with something new in the morning. The brain, much like a muscle, needs regular stimulation, and this stimulation can be especially effective in the morning hours because the mind hasn't yet been worn down by the fatigue of the day. Solving a short puzzle, learning a new word, keeping a journal, or simply mentally reviewing the day's plan can support a process linked to strengthening the connections between nerve cells. These kinds of small mental tasks require far more cognitive engagement than passively watching television. 78-year-old Ruth used to spend most of her mornings in front of the television after retiring. At her daughter's suggestion, she started spending 10 minutes after breakfast on crossword puzzles or number puzzles. Over time, she noticed that the small difficulties she used to have remembering words had lessened. Ruth's experience alone doesn't prove anything conclusively, but it shows that regular mental stimulation is a simple habit that can easily be added to a daily routine. Variety may matter here. Rather than always solving the same type of puzzle, sometimes learning new words in a language, sometimes reading a short article, and sometimes playing a simple strategy game can activate different mental skills. The goal isn't to perform perfectly. It's to gently stimulate the mind with something new each morning. One thing that made it easier for Ruth to stick with this habit was that she viewed the puzzles not as a competition, but as an enjoyable part of her day. Her daughter reminded her that the real goal wasn't finding the right answer, but keeping the mind engaged, which helped Ruth continue the habit without feeling pressured. Over time, in addition to puzzles, Ruth started watching short documentary segments on topics she knew nothing about and learning new recipes. This variety helped stimulate her mind in different ways. Word puzzles engaged her language skills, number puzzles engaged logical thinking, and new recipes engaged planning and sequential thinking. Experts note that this kind of variety can provide broader cognitive benefits than sticking to a single activity, because different regions of the brain can be stimulated more effectively through different kinds of tasks. Number 6, making a genuine social connection in the morning. Loneliness, especially in older age, is increasingly being studied as a significant factor linked to cognitive decline. Talking with a family member on the phone in the morning, chatting briefly with a neighbor, or sending a short message to a friend may seem simple, but these actions can activate the brain's networks that support emotional and social function. These kinds of interactions can be linked to a more positive mood and a greater sense of motivation for the rest of the day. 84-year-old George began spending his mornings mostly in silence after losing his wife. At his grandson's suggestion, he started having a short phone call with his daughter every morning after breakfast. In George's own words, this small change helped him feel far less lonely and far more purposeful for the rest of the day. The effect of social connection can vary from person to person, but it's increasingly recognized that regular, genuine communication can play a positive role in overall mood. This habit doesn't require long conversations. Sometimes even a short message that simply says, "Good morning, how are you?" can activate the chemical processes in the brain that support feelings of social connection. What matters most is that this connection is a genuine, attentive, listening-based interaction, not just a surface-level habit. George's grandson found a simple way to help him keep up this routine. They set a specific time each morning when George's daughter was also available. This way, George could keep up the habit with confidence, without worrying that his call might go unanswered. Over time, George also started exchanging short messages a few times a week, not only with his daughter, but with a former coworker as well. In George's own words, these connections made his days feel like they had, quote, something to look forward to. Experts note that social connection isn't just related to the content of a conversation, but also to the sense of regularity and mutual investment. In other words, knowing that someone is expecting to hear from you can positively affect the areas of the brain linked to motivation and reward. This makes it one of the most valuable habits that can be added to a morning routine, especially for older adults living alone. Number 7, practicing deep breathing or a short calming exercise. Morning hours are naturally the time of day when the stress hormone cortisol is at its highest. This is a normal part of preparing the body for the day, but excessive or prolonged elevation of cortisol can be linked to negative effects on attention and memory. A few minutes of deep breathing in the morning, a short moment of stillness, or a simple mindfulness practice can help balance this hormonal response and prepare the mind to start the day in a calmer state. 73-year-old Frank noticed for years that he felt tense and rushed every morning, and that this feeling carried over into the rest of his day. At a friend's suggestion, he tried spending 5 minutes before breakfast breathing slowly and deeply. Over time, he noticed that the tension he used to feel in the mornings had decreased, and that he started his day feeling calmer. Simple breathing practices like this don't require any special equipment or training, which makes them easy to add to a daily routine. No complicated technique is required here. Simply breathing in slowly through the nose and out slowly through the mouth for a few minutes can be enough. This practice can be especially effective when done before picking up the phone or turning on the news, giving the mind a chance to settle before it's exposed to outside stimulation. The biggest obstacle for Frank in adopting this habit at first was that he saw it as, quote, a waste of time. But his friend reminded him that these few minutes could actually increase his productivity for the rest of the day, since a calm mind tends to make clearer decisions. Over time, Frank made a point of practicing this before turning on the morning news, since he realized that negative content in the news could add even more tension to a mind that hadn't yet had the chance to settle. On some days, just 3 deep breaths were enough, while on other days, he preferred a quiet moment that stretched out to 5 minutes. Frank's wife noted that her husband has become noticeably less irritable and more patient in the mornings, even responding to small frustrations with much more composure than before. Changes like this can be difficult to measure, but they can be quite meaningful for everyday quality of life. Number 8, mentally planning the day and setting a small goals. The last habit may be the least noticed, but it could be one of the most effective, starting the day with a sense of purpose. Mentally identifying, or even briefly writing down, the 1 or 2 most important tasks of the day can activate the areas of the brain linked to planning and decision-making. This kind of clarity can help reduce feelings of scatteredness and indecision later in the day. 86-year-old Alina noticed that after retiring, her days felt aimless, and over time, this left her feeling unmotivated. At her therapist's suggestion, she started writing down her most important goal for the day in a small notebook each morning after breakfast. Sometimes it was something as simple as calling a friend, sometimes tending to her garden. Alina says this small habit gives her a sense of purpose and direction throughout the day. The power of this habit lies in its simplicity, not its complexity. Instead of preparing a long to-do list, focusing on just 1 or 2 meaningful goals can give the day direction without putting an unnecessary mental burden on the mind. This can be especially helpful in preventing the days from blending together after retirement. Alina's therapist offered her one more simple piece of advice. When writing down her goal, she should also briefly note how she wants to feel by the end of the day. For example, instead of simply writing "tend to the garden," she was encouraged to write something like, "tend to the garden and feel satisfied by the end of the day." This small difference helped Alina approach her goal not just as a task, but as a meaningful experience. Over time, when Alina looked back through her notebook, she could see just how full and meaningful the past weeks and months had actually been, which gave her an unexpected sense of fulfillment. On days when she didn't reach her goal, instead of being hard on herself, she reminded herself that trying again the next day was enough. This flexible approach played an important role in making the habit sustainable over the long term. When you put these 8 habits together, something remarkable begins to happen. They don't just work on their own, they reinforce each other. Morning sunlight helps wake up your brain. Drinking water and moving your body support healthy blood flow. A balanced breakfast provides steady energy instead of quick spikes and crashes. Challenging your mind and connecting with other people keep your brain engaged. And taking a few moments to breathe and plan your day creates a calmer, more focused start. Over time, these small actions can become part of a routine that supports your brain every single day. Research suggests that adults over the age of 65 who consistently follow healthy lifestyle habits often perform more steadily on cognitive assessments than those who don't. While no single habit is a magic solution, this reminds us that small, sustainable choices can make a meaningful difference over the long run. The good news is that you don't have to change everything overnight. Maybe tomorrow you simply begin your day with a glass of water. Next week, you might add a 10-minute walk. A little later, you could build another healthy habit on top of that. Real change rarely happens all at once. It happens one small step at a time. The people we talked about today, Walter, Dorothy, Harold, Margaret, Ruth, George, Frank, and Alina, didn't transform their mornings overnight. Each of them made gradual changes that matched their lifestyle, health needs, and daily routine. That's the key. Progress doesn't come from being perfect, it comes from being consistent. Now we'd love to hear from you. Which of these morning habits are already part of your routine, and which one are you thinking about trying first? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, or if you know someone who could benefit from it, please consider sharing it with them. And don't forget to subscribe for more practical science-based health tips to help you stay sharp, healthy, and independent for years to come.